Okay, hello everyone. It's Dashian Miller, and we're here with episode 132 of KUDEN podcast. Hey, I have a quick question for you. What do you think it'd be like if either one of two things, right? Either every grade level, right, from kindergarten, first grade up, every grade level, we had to be reminded about or relearn or learn a different set of like alphabet and ways of spelling and all that kind of stuff, right? Or we would expect that, let's say, a first grader could do a term paper on I don't know, Catcher in the Rye or something like that. Anyway, we'll talk about that because that's based on one of the questions that came in um, uh, for tonight's episode. So I'll be right back with you as soon as we do the intro.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. Real training for real people in a real world.
Real training for real people in a real world. Been using that slogan for a long, long time. That and the one for the Academy, which is master yourself, master your life, right? Anyway, so what was my question again? Oh, I know. A question came in for tonight's podcast. I don't know if it came in just because somebody had a question about it and it just came out, or at least one person took me seriously that if no questions came in, I wouldn't have a backup topic. And so this would be the shortest episode of KUDEN ever, right? So there'd be the intro. I'd say, well, no questions. And then the outro. And I don't know, maybe James and I would have a meeting. Anyway, all right. So my question before the intro, for those of you just joining in, right, was what if, right, at every grade level, students had to be retaught the alphabet, right? Or they were taught a new alphabet, right? Or a new way to spell things or whatever, right? Or on the other extreme, right? We expected that first graders could do a whole term paper, right? Or a book report or whatever, before they actually learn to identify the letters of the alphabet, spell, read, write, those kind of things, right? What would that look like? Either one. Okay? Well, the reason I ask that is because that's like three different camps in the training realm for a lot of folks. Okay, so for one group, right? Every time they move along, right, they keep hitting a wall. They have to be reminded that remember the basics, right? Remember the basics, right? I remember a long time ago, a long time ago for me, right? Manaka Shihan, who's now Unsui, right? He heads up the Jininkan. He originally was Hatsumi Sensei's right-hand man, technically, right? Until he went his own way and founded the Jininkan. He would always, like when he would do leave time away, because it was a major, I think he retired as a lieutenant colonel or a full colonel from the Japanese Air Land Forces, basically Japanese military, right? And so he used to always have this statement, which actually became the premise and the foundation for the Jininkan, which was that Westerners have really lousy basics, right? And the reason for that is because every time they come for training, people would have to remind them, right? But that would be like, every time, in elementary school, every new grade, right? Before you could even do the assignments, before you could even do the next piece, right? You'd have to be reminded, right? What's the alphabet? What's the alphabet, Johnny? What's the alphabet, Susie? Right? Say it, right? Okay, now we're going to make some words and whatnot. No, every level is a progressive level. It's a progression. And it depends on the previous levels, right? And our proficiency with the previous levels, right? Our martial arts training, our self-defense training is no different, right? Which leads me to the third camp, right? Which is those who put minimal effort into learning something because what they want to do is get the necessary evils out of the way so they can jump ahead, right? And imitate soke, or they can get on to the cool stuff or whatever. When after how many years have I been training? 1980, 90, right? Okay. Coming up on 43 years, right? I found out that the basics is the cool stuff, right? Because as Takamatsu Sensei, right? Hatsumi Sensei's teacher used to always say that you don't need any more than the Kyonapo. Now, that being said, right, this is not just 8 techniques, right? This is understanding the principal concept behind the Kyonapo and what drives it, but also that these models are made up of these Kihon no Kihon, fundamentals of the fundamentals, right, that make these models that are then your springboard to all this other stuff, right? Of course, nobody wants to hear that stuff either. But, right, that third camp, right, I know I mentioned first camp and I mentioned third camp. I'll come back to the guys in number 2. They're probably not on the podcast anyway. So, but third camp is we're just going to springboard right over like, yeah, alphabet. I got that. Okay. So, okay. I can spell CAT and I can spell DOG and all that. So now I'm going to be able to read a full book, comprehend it, and do a book report on it so that in a way that other people can understand the whole idea behind it and what I learned from it, right? That's people that, they just enough, right? And then what they want to do is just, they want to go from here to like way up, right? They want to go way, way high as quickly as possible because, they want to be Hatsumi Sensei or they want to be the Dai Shihan or whatever. But what they're really doing is ignoring the process that got the people that they're emulating or wanting to imitate, right? From point A to point Z, right? Way past point Z. Anyway, so, what about the guys at number 2, right? Because remember I said, what if you had to relearn the basics at every grade, right? Or be reminded, right? Or you were taught a different set of basics, a different alphabet, a different language, a different way to read and write, right? At every grade level, right? Well, that's like people that get a basic proficiency in the fundamentals, right? And then get bored, right? Because everything starts to look the same. Everything looks the same without the right understanding, right? And then what they do is they jump to another art or another system or another teacher or whatever, right? Because in the beginning, you got all these big lessons, right? But as you move along, the lessons get smaller and smaller and smaller. But the difference is that the big lessons in the beginning, it's about that lesson, right? How do I do this technique? Step by step, hand goes here, foot goes here, that kind of thing, right? The lesson is, or the technique is the lesson, right? So it's big, right? But the more of those that you get, of course, things start to look the same. But what you start to realize is that they're all connected, or they're all using the same elements, just in a different way, right? So in the beginning, the technique is the lesson. Later on, that little tiny little nugget of a lesson, right? I go to Japan and, 35, 40 hours of training in a two-week period. And I may pick up half a dozen new little things, right? Or little nuances or whatever, right? But each of those little things affects 90% of everything that I do. Okay. It's very, very different, right? But if we keep jumping around, right, what ends up happening is we feel like we're learning more and more and more things. But what we're doing is we're learning more alphabets. We're learning more base. We stay a perpetual beginner, right? So it's very, very different, right? Very different. So, Sensei, I thought you weren't coming up with a topic for this one. I didn't. Somebody sent it in, right? So I get a question from Richard, one of the guys in one of my programs. And so he sent this question in today let's see, what is the grading format for your online students? Okay. So I thought I'd cover this two different ways so that everybody would understand it, right? But the short answer is the grading format for my online students is no different than the grading format for my dojo students, okay? The requirements are the same. The standards are the same. What's different is the distance and how we might have to set things up, right? So my long distance guys, they tend to do video reviews for the most part, right? That may be changing here pretty soon because there's the system, right? Is a little bit clunky because they have to like shoot the video and then they have to upload it, and then I have to download it and I have to look at it and take notes and things like that. And then if I need to see something else, that gets added to their feedback sheet that gets sent back to them, and then they work on that, whatever, right? So what we're probably going to do here going into 2023 is maximize the use of Zoom or something like that to make it more personal, like we're in the same space, like they're actually demonstrating the technique in front of me, right? Because they would be, right? So the cool thing about technology as we move forward is it's taking away more and more excuses from people like, dojo training is best because the teacher's right there. The teacher's not inside your body. So what's the difference between a teacher looking through a little window at what you're doing and making corrections, other than I still won't have the ability to come over and grab parts of your body, yank you into position if you're not comprehending the words that are coming out of my mouth, right? But it's better than no training at all, right? So we're gonna make that little tweak. But that being said, right? So the format is like the testing format is you get these testing outlines that are emailed to you, and then you shoot these short little videos. Don't do a whole like 15, 20, 30-minute video, because it takes me 3 times the amount of whatever length of yours. That's not because I'm a slow learner, right? It's because I have to go back, review, whatever, right? Type out the feedback, go look at things again, whatever, right? Takes me 3 times the amount of time to review something than it took for you to shoot it, right? So again, so anyway, the little clips, right? So you get these little testing outlines, and then you send the review video that includes what I ask for, right? Everyone, especially those who have trained in the past, and I don't care if it's Bujinkan, Jininkan, Genbukan, some other martial arts style, some other self-defense system, whatever. There are certain things that I'm going to want to see like right out of the gate. So there's a kind of a, I hate the term onboarding, but there's a initial baseline review, right? Show me these kind of things, right? And they're very, very general, just so I can see where somebody is skill-wise, balance-wise, how they move their body, that kind of thing, right? And please don't send me anything that I've been training in the Bujinkan for like 40,000 years and I am underranked and I just want to know if you can help me get my black belt. Sure I can, but you're going to go through the same review process. It might not take the same amount of time, but you're going to show me what I require for my Shodans. If you're just looking to get rank, then find somebody else who will just get your rank, right? They'll process it, get their little split on the testing fees, or however that works, and go about their business, right? But all of my students, regardless of where they came from, what they're doing, how many black belt levels they have in some other martial art or whatever, all have the same standards. They all have demonstrated proficiency in certain techniques at different levels and things like that, so that I know that they know, right? So when we're working on the next level, right, just like grade school, right, that next level presumes that they're already proficient at the things leading up to that. If I just toss somebody in and say, oh yeah, you've been around for a long time, here, now you're an 8th Dan, right? Okay, now we're going to work on 9th Dan stuff, and then you can't do 75% of it because nobody ever held you accountable to doing these specific skills, or they let you slide on certain things or whatever. Okay? In all frankness, I'm not going to care. Okay, I can only care as much as somebody else does. But here's the way it really works, right? There's 2 perspectives you can take on your training, right? You can be skill proficiency centric. So rank is a reflection of that based on the curricula you're working through that a specific or particular teacher or group of teachers designed. And so that's your litmus test, right? But what that does is when a teacher looks at you or says, what rank are you or whatever, right? And you tell them, sorry, I got this sinus headache going, and maybe I'm getting a sneeze coming on or whatever. So anyway, they know what you should have learned, where you should be, and what you should need to do next, right? Okay. So you're either skill or skill proficiency centric, right? That's where your perspective is. What that really means is rank doesn't matter. It's not important to me. It's important that my teacher knows where I am, and at a glance, looking across the room, looking across the dojo or on a review or whatever, they already know, right, where I am, how to explain techniques to me, how to challenge me for the next piece or to give me the next step or whatever, right? So I don't speak below somebody's level, and I don't speak over their level, right? So that's one perspective. The other perspective is that the person is rank centric, right? Okay. So what they're going to do is they're going to find the path of least resistance to get to the number grade that they want or that they believe they deserve or whatever. Right. So I tend to focus on number 1, right? Skill proficiency centric people. They're going to get rank, right? They're going to get rank, right? But if somebody's rank centric, what I've found is that they'll train just long enough to get the rank that they wanted, and then they fade away, right? Or they will train less and less and less, and life gets in the way more and more and more. And then their reason for not training is whatever they've allowed to creep in because they got what they wanted, right? I'm not saying that they meant to do any harm. I'm not saying that they knew that that's what was happening or whatever, but it's the way it works, right? I spoke about this during a previous KUDEN where we were talking about people's proficiency or success or whatever bottlenecking at their lowest common denominator, right? Out of those 3 areas for success, right? We have our skills, we have our character traits, and we have our beliefs. Whichever of those needs the most work, or whichever of those is the least common denominator, that's your ceiling for success. It doesn't matter if my character traits, right? I'm a hard worker and I'm focused and I'm dedicated and all that kind of stuff, right? And it doesn't matter if I believe that I have the ability to get to a really, really high rank, right? If I have a crap curriculum or my skill set is wanting, I'm only going to get so far, right? Unless I get into a group where, you get ranked for having a good heart or whatever. But a good heart's not going to save you on the street. right? You can believe that it will, or you can believe that your skill set's going to work, right? Lots of people delude themselves about all kinds of things every single day, right? But anyway, right? So again, if my skill set's really, really high, a lot of people they want to be an instructor, right? They want to start a dojo and all that kind of stuff, right? But you know, what they're resting on is the fact that their martial arts skills are really, really high. They know a lot, right? Character traits, right? Right? You know, I'm dedicated and I really care about like teaching students and whatever, right? And I believe that at a certain rank, you know, I can be a teacher and I could be a really good teacher and all that kind of stuff. Great. Let's go and revisit skill sets, right? What's your business ability or your ability to manage finances, and you know what's your ability to create pieces, what we're going to call marketing pieces, right? I don't care if it's social post or whatever that you know, doesn't like, hey, let's get our ninjutsu on, or let's get our self-defense on, or what. I had somebody that actually I used to see their post and I'm like, the hell does that mean to somebody who might even be looking for that? What does that mean? Right? Most people speak to themselves, right? Or speak as though everybody should be where they are in their head, desire level, and whatnot, or have any freaking idea what they're talking about, right? But they don't, right? Which is why dojo and or training groups and or whatever come and go like the wind, right? Because there's a whole other skill set that's needed to run a dojo, right? Or to recruit students, to be able to attract them, because you're student centric, right? What are they looking for? What is it that we have? And how do I communicate that in a way that says to them where they are in their head that this is what you're looking for, other than going, ninjutsu's best, man. This is what you should be doing, right? What problem are they trying to solve, right? What problem were you trying to solve when you got involved in martial arts, right? Maybe you don't even know what that is anymore because it's been so long. But I can tell you a handful off the top of my head. Some people, it's about self-defense, right? They're worried about shit coming at them because they've either witnessed it or experienced it or whatever, and they need to make sure that's taken care of. Other ones, there's a subset of that want to learn because they feel responsible for this new family they've created, or they want to be the guy, right? A lot of those people end up going into law enforcement or military or whatever because they have that protector gene, so to speak, right? And they don't want to wing it, right? But there's a whole lot of other people that get involved in martial arts because they like Asian things, right? They have an inferiority complex and what they saw in the movies, right? Yeah, they want to be that guy, right? But the look in their eyes is like, you know, the kid in the candy store. Yeah, yeah. Okay. That it's not about really surviving things. They want to be the guy that just wipes the floor with everybody else. So maybe they were bullied, or again, insecurity, whatever, right? Some people, it's a fear motivator, right? They don't have anything else going for them, and they're afraid of what other people think about them, or would think about them if they, you know, if they don't do something, right? So it's like the Rocky mentality, the boxers and stuff, right? Marciano, that was his name. Anyway, right? Last name was Marciano, one of these boxers, right? Used to say that boxing champions come from the poor, right? They got nothing else going for them and stuff like that. But what they have is heart and determination, and they're fighting for existence anyway. So if you look at most boxing champions, right, that's the area they come from. Okay, I wouldn't say that every, but a high proportion of law enforcement, security, often military, and martial artists, ones that stuck around for a long time, right, came from a violent background, one way or the other. Okay, not my belief, right? This is a statistical kind of thing, and I don't know what the number is at the moment. Anyway, right? So again, it depends on what people are looking for. So But the short answer to Richard's question was the standards are the same. The format is, I mean, once you hit black belt levels, you have to come in. If you come in for seminars and our yearly camps and whatnot, then I'm already looking at you in real time during that anyway. Up to this point, we have not scheduled separate testing time slots, but that may be coming in the future as well. Now, that being said, the second part of this was I was going to, again, fits the format thing because it was a very simple question and it can be translated many different ways. I know, not in Richard's head because he was thinking about a specific thing. When I read it, right, I have a very multiplistic mind, right? So it can be translated multiple different ways. So format to me can also mean what's my path going to be like, right? So I borrowed a format, a training format, a curriculum format from a previous teacher that I'd worked with for years. And I was actually a part of their teaching guild, right? We had this Marishi Kai Teachers Guild, right? So we all collectively, right, shared ideas, training drills and all kinds of things, but we had a unified format, right? We used a singular curricula, right? And it looked different along the way, but at one point, and I like the logic of it, we saw that people were falling into the first group of students that I talked about earlier, right? Where they had to always be reminded about the alphabet. They had to be reminded how to spell cat and dog and the or whatever, so they could do the next level of training. And that came out of the way one of the iterations of my teacher's curriculum was where, white belt is basically a 10th dan, right? Not 10th dan, 10th class, right? Jukyu, right? Most people don't say Jukyu. People just start as a white belt, and then you have QQ, Hachikyu, Nanakyu. The Q, the class structure goes backwards. It's like algebra, right? They're on the negatives leading up to Shodan, and then the Dan levels go forward, right? So Shodan, Nidan, Sandan, 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of, well, actually Shodan doesn't mean 1, but that's for another class, right? So everything counts in the order that most people are used to, but the class system, right, Q system is 10, 9, 8, 7, leading toward black belt, right? So, but anyway, and we were using the Godai as a framework, right? So we could keep like principles together, right? So 9th to 8th Q was what we were calling basic water, but what we're looking at is this long range defensive angling, right? The Kamae at that level was Ichimonji, Seigan, that kind of thing, right? 8 directional rolling, counter strikes, uke nagash, that kind of stuff, right? Long range defensive angling to pull somebody out, right? And so then, 7th Q was basic fire, and that was Jumonji, moving forward, right? Direct committed action, that kind of stuff, leaping, whatever, right? And then that moved up to 5th Dan. 5th Dan was a void level, so it was an assimilation of things, right, up to that point. And then we revisited the Godai. So 4th Q was intermediate earth, 3rd was so 8th Q, basic water, right? Here's all this stuff, right? 3rd Q was intermediate. So now it's still this defensive angling, but the range is shorter, and now things are starting to cross over. So it's not so extreme, right? So not such big movement, but there's elements of this fire commitment to it, that kind of stuff, right? Vaulting and all that kind of stuff, right? What we kept finding was people were like zipping through the lower levels, and then they get to that second phase in the Q thing before, on the way to Shodan. And let's say somebody was 4th Q, right? And they're working on 3rd Q stuff, right? So now they're not working on Seigan, they're working on this Doko, no Kamae, right? This Kamae that we worked on a long time ago that we have in our thing, right? So they're working on that, except that their angling sucks, right? Their timing sucks, their flow sucks because, well, they put everything into a nice little box, right? So after they graduated out from 8th Q to 7th Q, they stopped working on the 8th Q stuff. So now it's not what it's supposed to be to start working on intermediate stuff, right? So this new iteration, which I kept, right, when I did my own thing, was to create modules, right? So there's 5 modules leading from white belt to first degree black belt, and each of these modules has what used to be the basic and intermediate stuff with kind of a void adaptive element in there, right? So now people are going through 3 belt levels within the same element, right? Before moving on to the next one, so I can make damn sure that they've worked on it long enough for it to go from here into muscle memory, right? So they don't have to think about that next thing. So when they're in mod 1 is more of a kind of a introduction to things and whatnot, and it's a sampling of things, right? And the real focus on mod 1, that first module, is to make sure that students are able to handle the 95 to 98% of attack types that happen every day here in the West, right? How people punch, how people grab, those kind of things, the most common things, so that we can get that stuff out of the way, right? As Ishizuka Sensei likes to say in Japan, you don't need 2,000-year-old secrets to handle basic crap, right? Somebody's just flailing or whatever, right? You don't need that. You do need to be able to handle it, but you don't need to be a freaking Ninjutsu master to handle what the average attacker throws, right? So that kind of gets that out of the way. And then we start, mod 2. And again, all this stuff is in mod 1, right? Just not to that extent, right? So when we hit mod 2, we take this sampling stuff they had for this long range stuff, right? And then that's what they're focusing on. So they're getting Koto Ryu Seigan no Kamae, Gyoko Ryu Ichimonji no Kamae, and you can call it, I don't even know where it came from. I have it in my notes as Kuki Shinden, but even Seno Sensei, before he passed, used to say in class, right, when we'd work on Doko, he'd go, we used to work on this thing all the time, or we used to do this all the time. I don't know why Sensei stopped, okay? I don't care, right? But what we end up with in each module is, like in mod 2, it's this profiled idea, but there's a close, mid, and long-range version, and there's a kamae that fits close, mid, long range, right? And then there's strategically, externally and internally, right? The way we think, the way we feel, that kind of stuff, right? It comes out of the scrolls. There's what I would call a hot, so an aggressive, a cold, more defensive, and it's not really neutral, like you don't feel anything. It could go either way, right? Version of that idea. So there's an emotional component to it. There's a psychological, strategic component, and there's a physical, tactical component to what a student's learning, right? Rolling, all that kind of stuff, right? So students spend more time. They're going through 3 belt levels in each module, but there's a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level for a box of toys, right? For a strategic idea, principles and concepts, and what that looks like coming from the different lineages in each module, okay? And then, so what we found is that when people move into mod 3, here's the cool thing, right? We're now working on like very quick intercepting thing. And for a while, students keep defaulting to this naname retreating kind of thing. And they go, oh man, I can't get that. No. Okay. What's happening is you worked on that for so long and got good at it that it's in muscle memory, that's there. I now know that that's there, and you don't have to think about it, right? That's the goal of training, because in a full speed, all out fight or attack, you don't have time to be thinking about which kamae, which technique, where does my foot go? If you still have to think about that, then you need lots of training, right? So anyway, they go through these different modules. Each module is a certain type of tactical approach that comes from the lineages, right? So one is this profiled kind of, range kind of thing, stretch somebody out, break their strength kind of thing, and then, come back in and tag them. Most people, it's basically an ichimonji no kata kind of idea, right? And then there's a whole one on this whole intercepting kind of thing. Jumonji, Kosei, Bobi no Kamae, right? This, right? Here's a line. If you cross it, you die kind of thing, right? There's you can't wait for this guy to get to you. So you need to preemptively take the fight to him kind of thing. It's a whole other way to do things, right? And then there's a whole module on this whole side slipping, right? He's stronger, got bigger guns, weapons, whatever, right? And I need to use this idea of flanking maneuvers, right? So, and then there's a kind of an assimilation model, mod 5, module, not model, module, where the things that could either go in any one of those or don't really fit, right, go there, right? And that's also mod 4 and mod 5 are black belt prep modules. So that's where combinations start to happen, punch combinations, kick combinations, those kind of things that get somebody ready for Shodan, because Shodan is the springboard. Shodan to me is a student showing me that they have a toolbox full of tools. They know what they are and they know how to use them. But they're not necessarily all that. I mean, they're not super smooth to flow. Timing's a little off, that kind of stuff, but they can make things work, right? Got a toolbox, right? Nidan for me is the level where I expect that somebody can use this and nothing else to win a fight or to survive an attack against the average Joe Blow on the street that's going to throw whatever they want, however they want. Okay. Some of you guys have heard me say this before, and this was based on a discussion with Hatsumi Sensei after he had mentioned something in class one time when I was in Japan. He was describing this thing, but he equates that to 8th or 9th Dan based on the way he was promoting people. So do I expect the same at different? If my students are skill and technique proficient, or the proficiency that's their mindset, right? They don't care what number is behind that, right? People that are rank centric, they do care about the number. Okay. So, but if you look across all Japanese martial arts that are going on and what students are able to do at certain levels, based on what I've studied, learned, researched, and all that, I do believe that what I expect for a Nidan is much closer to what, Shotokan or whatever expects. Okay. Techniques are different, but the proficiency level is different. Okay. So anyway, and then black belt levels have their own curriculum standards, right? To go from Shodan to Nidan, Nidan to Sandan, that kind of thing, right? And every level presupposes that you have learned and developed the skills from the previous box of toys, okay? Nidan relies on you having the tools that were taught in those things leading up to Shodan. But because what you're going to be focusing on is timing, distancing, angling, that kind of stuff. And I know everybody's nodding. Oh, but see, we learned that way early. Everybody learns it way early. What I expect is that you're able to maintain that under pressure against somebody who's looking to beat, break, or kill you. Okay. It's one thing to be able to do it in a dojo. It's something altogether different when the shit's happening. Right. So there's that. Right. So if somebody, they're having an off day, right? They got this skill and I believe that they can do it, but they're on their way to the friggin' drugstore because they've got the flu and their body's just wants to sleep, right? And they're doing everything they can to move along, right? And that's the day they get jumped. Well, they can fall back on Shodan skill. They can at least make it happen, even if they're not, super cool ninja guy, right? Sandan, Yondan, all that depend on that flow and all that, because we're going to be looking at other things, right? Being able to escape blocks, holds, and throws, setting him up so he gives you exactly what you need to do the technique to put him where you need him to go, that kind of stuff, right? Same thing I tell teenagers. I've told my teenagers, well, they're out in the world now, but whenever they would think that they knew all their shit, right? Problem that's going on here is not that we disagree because we have a different perspective. Well, we do have a different perspective, but the problem is you don't think big enough. Most people stop at, I just want to win and I don't want to lose. What the hell does that look like? Right? Where are you? Right? That's going to mean something different for a police officer that needs to worry about police brutality charges and all kinds of things, right? And not being able to do just whatever to win, right? It's going to look different for a soldier who could pretty much do anything on the battlefield as long as he's not wiping out innocents, right? And that's going to look different for a civilian, right? So what's the context, right? What rule sets, right? Okay. And again, rather be tried by 12 than carried by 6. You're going to jail. Okay? Because that's just for the most people that say that, it's just a BS statement that allows ego to sidestep a really, really freaking important aspect of self-protection. Because if you're not considering that, then my question to you is, who's going to protect the people that you say you're there to protect when you're in jail or you're in the morgue or you're in the whatever? Okay? And how much money do you have to lose to prove that you were right? Okay? It cost you about $30,000, even if you were right, to prove your innocence, if it goes to trial. On the easy side. I know somebody right now that's going through something, cost them 10 up front to get to the preliminary hearing, right? Maybe the next one. And if it goes to trial, the retainer just to start to prep for trial is 25 grand. So $35,000 out of the gate. Okay. Again, most people don't think big enough. They come up with their bullshit ideology and they just run from there. And then, like somebody who's truly not prepared, like a teenager, becomes adult age and then steps out in the world and then is punched in the face by everything that they never knew about and didn't want to know about because, well, parents are just old and stupid. Just like teachers. They don't really understand, right? Anyway, so Richard, I hope that answered your question. I don't know if he's on or not. Do you know if he's on, James? He is on? Okay. So, Richard, if I didn't answer the question the way you meant it, feel free to clarify, and I'll go from there. So let's make James live here. I mean, he's live. He's, put him in his little box down there in the corner. So any other questions come in? Because that was the big one that I wanted to address. And anybody that wants to talk about that more, that might be interested in much deeper. Let's see. When we send the email out do we send an email out with the recording or with the link to the recording afterwards? We do that, right?
For this?
Yeah. Do we do that?
Not for this, no.
Okay. Well, what we'll do then on the YouTube version down in I'll do it on the KUDEN page as well. Down in one of the comments or on YouTube, down in the description area, I'll include a link to my calendar page on Calendly that you can book a call and we can discuss, training or whatever. And if nothing else coming out of that, right? If I know where you are and where your sticking points are or whatever, I'll give you some things to get to the next level, regardless of whether we ever work together or not. Because I promise you that free call, you'll get more out of that than a lot of people get out of a year or 2 or 10 of training. So anyway, And if nothing else, you'll get out of it whether or not I'm somebody you want to ever listen to again. I'm okay with that too. That's something I haven't been nearly as clear about. And moving into 2023, that's going to be my one of my biggest focus things, to be much more clear about who I can help and the type of student I'm looking for, right? That I know I can help, and to be more clear about those that either I can't or don't want to help. And this has nothing to do with personality conflicts. Okay. It has to do with what somebody's looking for. Okay. And again, it just happened. What, James, you filter out my email and stuff. Like in the last month or two, somebody popped in another question or whatever. Can you help me get so-and-so rank or whatever?
Mhm.
I mean, if that's how you're leading off, really? Seriously? That speaks volumes. I can't, and they get the same explanation, right? And then most of them just go silent after that. Right? Yes, I can. Here's my requirements. 98%, I never hear from again, because they're fishing for somebody that they can use as a conduit to get the rank. And those people don't like me very much at all. And I'm okay with that, because I mean, if you want to buy rank, at least be honest about it, right? And why seek out somebody like me? Shit, go to the tail end of any freaking black belt magazine. There's plenty of organizations out there that you get a membership and you pay them whatever the fee is, and they'll do up a certificate for you in whatever black belt rank, in whatever style you want to put in a frame and impress your friends with. No, but I want the one in, well, the second option, and I'm not condoning this, but the second option is to do what a bunch of other people did and just find a fairly clear picture of a rank certificate, right? Digitally photocopy it, know which section to blank out, and then do your best at writing your name and kana in there and the date in the correct format over in this little corner, and call it a day. People have done that too, right? Shit, you don't have to work nearly as hard to get rank, right? Because I remember way back in, early 80s, Hatsumi Sensei had brought, I think, Nagato Sensei and somebody. Oh, yeah, I was at that seminar. Holy shit, I just didn't go to the dinner because I wasn't in the group at that point, right? I was at dinner, and there was this guy was talking to Nagato Sensei about, what it really came down to was something akin to, I'd give my left testicle, to be a black belt in Ninjutsu, right? And Nagato Sensei flipped over a drink coaster and wrote out a certificate on him and said, "There you go. Now you're a Shodan." Right? This guy wrote a whole article in Black Belt magazine, right, about like this honor and, oh my God, and whatever. He must have seen great things. Dude, he flipped over a piece of paper that's used to keep a table from getting wet. It's a decorated piece of scrap paper. He flipped it over and wrote out a certificate on it and gave it to you. Okay. Well, think about it any way you want. And he obviously did. I mean, he made a big deal out of it. But most of us were like, holy shit, you're actually going to take that seriously, right? So on one side of this paper or cardish kind of thing, right, you've got Japanese writing that says you're a Shodan. And on the other side, it says what? Heineken, right? Budweiser, whatever. I mean, that's going to be taken. The number of things that people take seriously, that doesn't astonish me anymore. Anyway, so, all right. Did Richard clarify, or was it good? Are we okay?
He hasn't said either way.
Probably put him to sleep. She just drone on and on and on. Anyway. Any other questions?
Phil Jones just asked if there's any updates on the Komusai.
No, I actually got thrown off a couple of days. I apologize. My mom had a false alarm. We thought she was having a heart attack, and I actually had to rearrange classes and all that. And on top of that, we had parades, and my schedule just got thrown off. So this week, that stuff will be coming out. So if there are any topics or lessons or whatever, right? Since you're going to be there, that you would like to learn, send an email, right? Because if I can fit it in, I'll do that. And that's open to anybody. The caveat is you better show up, or either live or virtual, because I'm not just taking suggestions from people to tailor a personalized training event from people that have no freaking intention of showing up anyway. Right? So that's it.
Richard just said yes, sir. So I take it that means that he's good.
Okay. All right. That was more than I ever thought I wanted to know. It is what it is. I don't think anybody should ever have to wonder what my opinion is about things, especially if you're coming to me for training. Unless I specifically tell you that we're working on Ninja no Uge, in which case you better be paying attention and be really good at reverse engineering lessons. Actually, there's plenty that people don't know, but not about the training. I'm very transparent about that. I'm also transparent about things that are about me that you don't need to know in the context of a teacher-student relationship. I'm not here to be anybody's best buddy. Kind of defeats the purpose. I'll be your buddy, but I'm not going to be your best buddy. Anyway, what else?
Richard just asked, do you notify the class when it's time to test?
I don't notify the class. We up to this point, we notify people individually. James and I are actually going through a series of meetings and whatnot to make some changes. And one of those things is to put some more automation in place. And one of those things we're going to be automating is because up to this point, we've kind of just done it personally with students, and people have been able to sidestep things and whatever, right? So what we're going to be doing is automating a series of emails based on the same kind of timing that we use at the academy for people to be moving through. Now, if you accelerate and you move through things faster and you pass your test and things like that, then things would get out of sync, right? Because, right, you're ahead of the game, right? And that tends to happen sometimes, and then other times you need more time because of the tactic or the strategy or something computing or not computing well for the student. But what we want to do is keep people on track at a consistent rate, right? A consistent pace. So what the automated emails will do is, and it's not depersonalizing anything. It's just so that we don't drop the ball on our end, right? So that once somebody signs up into a program, then, and the cool thing is that the system that we have is for any person that we sign up into something, we can click a little button that actually for that person has it start. They can either start fresh because they're brand new at it, or if they've been training for a while, like a lot of my guys that are now grandfathered into things, right? We'll have to click that it starts right where they are rank wise plus the next one, right? So James, you know what I'm talking about, right? Just the timing and the syncing of when things go out, right? So we can tell the system to start with email 27 instead of email 1 kind of thing, right? So then what will happen is every 8 weeks or every 2 months, actually, I think we're going to set it up so that it'll happen every month. So we try to do a promotion to belts every 2 to 3 months, right? but monthly we try to do a skill review. So the other thing people ever pay for, because what's included in the online training program is regular reviews, right? Let me see what that's looking like. Let me get some feedback. Let me make sure you're on the right track, kind of thing. That's included, right? If you're going for rank, there's a cost to that because that has to be sent to Japan and processed. And there's, we have to create a certificate on our end, get one from Japan, belt, all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a cost to that. So testing every 2 to 3 months, but there's interim reviews, right? So there'd be a review video or a review message going out, let's say on first month after you join. So on month 2, right? Or at the end of the first month that you've just gotten into the program. And then somewhere in the middle to middle of the testing month, one will go out as a reminder with the little outline and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and once we switch to Zoom, then I will probably be doing it just like I do it at the academy, right? There'll be a block of people that will be scheduled at a certain day and time. We'll be on, and I'll say, show me Koto Ryu Seigan no Kamae. Show me Gyoko Ryu Ichimonji no Kamae, right? Show me a forward shoulder roll right side from whatever defensive profiled kamae, Ichimonji, Seigan, Doko, whatever, that you prefer. I don't care which one. Show that, right? So it'll be more live and interactive that way, just like I do it at the academy, right? Excuse me. So yes, there will be those automated kind of things, right? But again, going into 2023, I'm making these little changes because I want to make sure that students are seeing regular ongoing progress. Okay. Pretty simple. Right. I mean, I don't check in on a lot of these things, right? I'm not a who's my competitor kind of person, right? In our model, I'm going to use the word business, so don't freak out, right? In our dojo curriculum model, in our belief system, in the warrior concepts realm, right? I do not believe that other martial arts styles, other martial arts schools, other martial arts instructors, whether they're outside or inside this art or whatever, are my competition, okay? That doesn't mean I don't have any, right? My competition is the Xbox or the Switch or Netflix or whatever habits, YouTube, whatever, right? People can slip into that keep them from coming to class, training regularly, practicing and developing their skills, and knocking them off track. That's our competition, not other schools. If somebody is attracted to that thing, they think they can get what they're looking for from that teacher student style or teacher school style, whatever, more power to them, right? My thing is that a student gets what they're looking for. Now, it also suggests that maybe either there's a problem with the way we communicate things, and so somehow I ended up attracting somebody that really wasn't a good fit for us, or they weren't seeing not regular consistent value. They weren't seeing value along the lines of, again, the problem that they were trying to solve, right? I see this stuff as a solution to a problem, right? So what's the problem, right? And then conveying things in a way where I'm segregating people, not in a racial way either, okay? Where I'm making sure that we're attracting people that this is definitely for and it's a good fit for, and we're repelling people that it's not going to be a good fit for, personality wise or whatever, right? They're just it's not their cup of tea. So anyway, so yes, there's a regular ongoing. I mean, right now we do it manually, but there's a regular ongoing kind of thing. Like I've got one guy in Michigan, Michael. that works through his stuff. He's on the weekly coaching calls. He asks questions as necessary, takes things, and then when he's ready, he whips up a series of videos, uploads them for me, sends me an email with the links. I take a look at those. If there's something else I need to see, I let him know. And we go on that way. In all honesty, 80 to 90% of the people that are in the program right now are so not rank oriented that they're not even scheduling for reviews. Okay. So I must be doing a really good job of explaining things in a way that I'm attracting those folks, but we're going to need to make some tweaks to reframe ranking for that mindset so that they're not missing anything or they're not bottlenecking, right? And because they just want to learn everything, but things aren't being learned in a logical order with prerequisites so that they can really get a handle on the skill set and the power that's inherent at different levels, if that makes sense. I mean, I know that you understand English. I'm talking about the logic, right? So to me, this is what a teacher does, right? They're not just, and I think this is what a lot of people miss too, right? They're really good technicians. They're really good with skill sets, but they make lousy communicators, and they're not student centric. Yes, I know they like their students and they want to make sure their students learn the skills correctly, but they never bother to learn anything like learning types and how you communicate that way. They're always going to pass things on the way they learned it, right? Regardless of whether their teacher was a good teacher or not. I'm not saying they weren't a skilled practitioner, right? But just because I learned it, my first teacher, years into things, right, admitted that the way things were structured when I went through, he was lucky. He felt lucky that so many of us had attained to a skill where we were teachers and all that. And of course, this was discussed, in private in the teachers group. And that's why we were trying to fix things, right? Because a lot of people end up getting confused, or a lot of people felt like they were left behind or whatever. And these were good, well-meaning students, right? That we just lost because of the presentation format or whatever, right? So we're always looking to make sure that people are getting what they need. And any teacher should be doing things in a way so that their students learn it and develop the skill sets faster than it took them. This generation has it easy. I freaking hope so. Every generation should be learning how to do things better. Now, if you're cheating and shortcutting the process, right? So you're getting rank faster, but you're not getting the skill sets faster. That's a completely different thing, right? But I want people to not have to struggle nearly as much as I did. Yes, there's work involved. Yes, there's struggle involved. Yes, right? But not because I'm keeping a thumb on your forehead and keeping you down, right? Or this is the way I learned it, so damn it, if it was good enough for me, good enough for my teacher. And who said they were good teachers? Just because they had the title of teacher. And I'm not knocking anybody. What I'm suggesting is that to teach effectively as a teacher, as a communicator, right, is a whole different skill set than the martial skills that the student learns, right? How do you convey an onikudaki? How do you pre-frame it or reframe it for people that look at it and go, oof, man, that looks really complicated. I don't think I can learn that, right? Or they think they know it, but they keep making the same mistake. So how do we use a framework that takes them away, and they're going to be really defensive, right? Because you called them out on a problem area, right? So immediately psychological walls go up, right? Whether they mean to or not, right? So how do I do it in a way that temporarily distracts them away from the correction that I need to make, and how that process will work? Slide in the correction and then recognize the effort or the improvement afterwards, right? It's all come out of, fairly modern communication methods and the skill sets necessary to market and maintain an operational dojo long term, completely different from the teacher's skills and from the technician's skills. Very different. Okay. This is what I've learned as I've moved. I've had to add and learn new skill sets, right? So that I could have a school that would weather an 8-month shutdown through a goddamn pandemic that ruined a whole bunch of people, right? While we were watching people scramble to figure out how to use Zoom to run classes, we had been doing online classes either as audio kind of things or, video or whatever for shit. How long? Years, right? So adapt or die. It's the law of evolution, right? Adapt or die, right? And anyway, so, and it's amazing how many people, who before the pandemic knew the right way to do things and then ended up having to adapt or let their skill sets fall to nothing, right? Because this damn pandemic is a reason I can't train. No, your belief system is a reason you can't train. Your character traits are the reason you can't train. Think about ancient Japan, right? There was this system. As a matter of fact, Stephen Hayes named one of his first dojos the Kasumi-an. Kasumi is a play on words, right? Because it means haze or fog, right? His name was Hayes, get it, right? But an an is a retreat, and it directly pointed, because most of us weren't local, right? Most of us flew in or traveled in or whatever for seminars or private training or whatever. But an an was a retreat. It was a place in ancient Japan where warriors could get away from the everyday grind and the turmoil and all that kind of stuff to train one-on-one for a day or 3 with a teacher, or just to get away and to go into retreat, right? Meditate, spend some decompression time, practice some skills. I mean, if they trained one-on-one with a teacher, it was not long-term like things are today. The dojo concept is fairly freaking new, right? So they would train with a teacher. That teacher, during those 1 to 3 days, might only taught them one technique. And then they went back into their lives and it was their responsibility to practice, right? So this whole idea of distance training, only getting with your teacher every once in a while or whatever, people are like, that's not the way it's always been done. Bubba, I think you need to do some more historical research, because whatever you think is traditional historical is bullshit, right? To most people, tradition, right, or the right way to do things is what it looked like when they first joined. And they just make the assumption that that's the way it's always been. And sorry or not sorry, but they're wrong. Okay. Anyway, any other questions, comments, complaints?
No, sir.
Sensei, you're full of caca. I went earlier today. I'm good. Besides that, I have blue eyes, which means it can only get to about here, right? No offense to all my brown eye friends. Last call. Questions, comments? A lot of people have been convinced that there's like no testing in the Bujinkan and all that. Okay. Not at Hombu, but there were teachers that had standards, curriculum and whatnot, right? And here's the question. How do you get where you're going if you don't know where you are? Other than, well, this number is attached to this piece of cloth that I wear around my waist. That says nothing about where you are. Okay? Saying Somebody saying that they're a Shodan, Nidan, Hachidan, whatever, means absolutely nothing outside of the context of comparing it to other people's numbers, right? Or the structure. Well, there's 10 ranks, so right. But what does that mean? What does that number mean? What skill sets do you own? What can I presuppose that you've already learned and you're really freaking good at so we can do the next thing? What does it mean? Well, every time I ask that question, I hear crickets. Okay? So, tis what it is. All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Nope. All right. So we've got space. Like I said, by the end of the week here, we'll have more final details for those of you that are on the fence about Daikomyosai. I know most Bujinkan groups and whatnot do their Daikomyosai, give or take somewhere between right around Hatsumi Sensei's birthday, right? And then they complain because like number of students have dwindled. Well, shit, the number of high-ranking teachers doing Daikomyosai, right, over the decades have bloomed, right? So what? Everybody's fighting for the same students, right? I just wasn't playing that game, and it's right between Western holidays, and it's just whatever, right? So we just moved it a little bit, right, a couple of weeks into the beginning of the new year. So now it's still, honoring Hatsumi Sensei, just not at his birthday, right? Daikomyosai, great cosmic light. Right? It was just a kind of reference to him because he was the source of the light and enlightenment and wisdom and all that stuff that we were seeking, right? So it doesn't really freaking matter when it's done, right? But it moves into the new year, so now it becomes this central focal point for students to review where they've been, right, up to this point, and to get kind of focused on the next couple of weeks and months, right, for progress. So ours this year, 2023, is January 6th, 7th, and 8th, right? The 6th is a Friday, so we have a late evening thing. People that come in for that are welcome to jump into the classes that are going on at the dojo normally before that happens. There's no extra cost to that. If you're coming in for Daikomyosai from 5 to 7:30, right, you can train in whatever we're doing normally, right? And then there's an 8 to 10 late evening kind of thing for people that can make it in. So kind of an early start for folks, and then 9 a.m. Saturday morning things, are really jazzing in. Some people can only make it for a day. Some of my local guys can only make it for a session, so they do like a morning or an afternoon. I get it, work schedules and all that kind of stuff. There'll be a virtual option on this one. I don't know moving forward if we're going to keep doing the virtual options. They're very, very helpful for the 1 or 3 people that do it, but we'll see. But anyway, and I think this year I didn't do it in the past ones, but we're going to get back onto a tradition that started with one of my previous teachers, and we're gonna keep it going. So we will be doing a New Year's Goma fire ceremony, which is actually taken from and altered a little bit, but it's taken from the 4th level of practice and progress in Mikyo. For normally it's for burning away finer and finer, smaller and smaller impurities and things like that to get to that what in Sanskrit is called Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is full and complete enlightenment kind of thing, right? But there are these 9 stages in the Goma. But either way, we borrow it as an active meditation, right? As a goal setting kind of thing. Just something about going through the process and watching it physically happening. It's a guided meditation. More of my students have accomplished big ass goals doing that thing than they had doing New Year's resolutions and standard goal attainment kind of thing, right? So go through the process so that they can actually physically see themselves symbolically producing the outcome ahead of time, right? It just gives folks that emotional charge and and it here's a play on words, right? It burns it into their friggin' memory, right? I know it's a fire starter, right? But it burns it into their memory. It becomes this constant reminder they went through this cool thing, and it was something that I did a lot coming up through. Something that my teacher had pulled in. One of my teachers had pulled in, and it was something that we looked forward to, and something that just helped to create major results, right? Because most people focus on this is the thing I want, but they don't mentally go through the process that looks at the steps necessary, the impediments that can get in the way, right? And actively, intentionally acknowledging and acting out, symbolically acting out the doing and the destroying of these things that need to be done and need to be taken care of so that the thing can be realized. So for this one coming up, we're going to restart this tradition. So it'll be a cool thing. So if you can make it in, great. If you jump on the virtual thing, you'll be able to do it virtually. There's a process we'll have in place that you can do it. You'll be able to watch it and go through it. I'll have to do a couple of pieces actively for you unless you set things up on your end, but it's kind of difficult to set it up. But anyway, right? So it'll be a cool thing. And Phil Jones is already coming in for it. The guys, I'm thinking about the guys that are on now. A bunch of my local guys are already signed up for it, obviously. So anyway, it'll be good. James won't be there. He avoids everything. I jest, right? All right. So is that it? No other questions, comments, complaints? No?
Richard just threw out that a problem he might have is doing rolls and break falls due to limited space.
Limited space where? Like at his home? Okay, guys, I understand that you have limitations, but as long as our head is tuned to, I will have a problem doing without the other half of that. So I have to find a way to. You're never going to think like a ninja. You're never going to think like a high-level warrior. Warriors are decisive people and they're problem solvers. And this is not about Richard. This is we get these things all the time. Okay? I promise you, no one can come up with a problem that I didn't face. And if I could do it, you can do it. Okay? You may not be able to do it where it's comfortable and easy, right? As a matter of fact, one of the things we're working into the new iteration of our online program is we're going to teach people how to create a dojo space where they don't have a dojo space. These are lessons that my guys got after they joined, but we're going to lead with that. Like, here's a whole micro training. Here's how to create your dojo, right? Symbols and all that kind of stuff. Even if you don't have the space because you had furniture and all that kind of stuff, and honey won't like it and all that kind of stuff, right? Because everybody has problems that get in the way, right? My first wife did not understand this at all, right? Just did not understand it, okay? And to her, I was taking time away from family, and I was spending money that ultimately she wanted to be able to spend, but I was spending money that, we supposedly didn't have. And, why did I need to learn this stuff and whatever? So I had to be able to explain that stuff. And in certain cases, like one of my teachers actually had a conversation with her, and it wasn't like, you better let him, nothing like that. Right. But that explanation stuck with me and turned into a script. I give that to my students now. Say this. And like it works like a charm. I've never had a student come back and go, didn't work. Right? It was such this magical thing that, I mean, I didn't know how to do it. And he sat down and said, look, here's X, Y, Z, if you really wanted him to do this, right? Whatever. But, here's the thing, right? Here's what you're getting out of it, right? She still didn't understand the allure afterwards, but like 95% of the resistance just vaporized. So I'm going to work that up as a script and give it to everybody, right? Instead of me just like telling somebody what to say, right? One-on-one, right? That's going to be a micro training in the new iteration because it's a problem that people have. Honey won't let me. I don't have the time. That's a problem that people have. How do you create time? Okay. These are all Kuji things, right? Influencing the thoughts of others is a Kuji level. Okay. Breaking the bonds of time and space, a Kuji level. Okay. So, but as long as people keep thinking about that shit in woo-woo terms, they're never going to produce practical results. Okay. Cool stuff. Right? I have ailments. I have whatever. Right? Healing self and others. That's a Kuji level. Anyway. All right. Are we good? Anything else?
Sensei Golem says 4 square feet is good for break falls.
4 square feet. That's only a 2x2 space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I promise you that if you have a really small area to train in, you will learn your rolling and your break falls way better than people that have a big open dojo. You will have to learn how to break, not break. Right? I mean, put on the brakes so you don't run into something, right? You'll learn to bump into things and then change direction, right? You'll learn how to do all kinds of really cool things that the average person will not, or it'll take longer for them to get there because they don't have that constraint. They don't have that problem. But they'll have that problem if they get knocked into a freaking down in an alley next to a big ass dumpster and then there's a brick wall and stuff like that, and they just don't have that kind of space. I don't think people understand that from a ninja's perspective, constraints, challenges, and limitations are things to be prayed for and to be thankful for because they force you to be better than people that train in big-ass comfort zones. My cops have reasons to train and accelerate the training way faster than everybody else that can just take their time because, they don't have an imperative need. How the hell do you know? How do you know when you're going to be attacked? How do you know what you're going to need? I had a guy one time, we were discussing firearms and, he really enjoyed things and whatever. And he was talking about a specific type. You can probably guess because I'll tell you, it's been in the news. It's highly politicized. There's a ton of misinformation running around. Like AR does not mean automatic rifle, right? It was the company name. Anyway, right? So he said, I really don't need one of these. I said, how the hell do you know what you'll need when an attack manifests? I mean, if you already know what you're going to need and what you don't need, you already have a freaking ESP skill that should make you unattackable because you'll already know who, what, where, when, and how. Why the hell do you need anything? Right? I really don't need. How do you know? Right? But I would challenge everybody, right? To, like, all beliefs are challengeable until you find and say, I have a mentor that says, we challenge all of our beliefs except those that we actually hold, like it's a hard, fast, this is a given, right? And we don't challenge those at all. But see, to me, they're not beliefs, because there's a difference between a belief and something that you know, right? Something that you know. Here's something we'll wrap this up with. Let's see if I can. This. Yeah, I use this. Why not? Okay. So, and James, you'll keep track of people, and you can not answer, but that's just cheating because you're not willing to commit. Okay. That's a whole different character trait, right? So, I have a packet with a lens wipe, right? A lens cleaning wipe in the palm of my hand. Who believes me? You can post something like, I don't know, a heart or a check or me or whatever. Okay. Who believes me? Anybody saying yes, James?
Not yet.
Anybody saying no?
Well, Phil just says I do.
Okay. No, you don't. Next. No, you believe me. Okay. Okay. People will believe me or not believe me, not because they know anything about what's in the palm of my hand, but because of whether they trust me to be honest with them, or they think I might be tricking them. Okay? And some people are just not willing to commit. And then later they'll go, well, I thought that was right. Right. Or I thought he was wrong, whatever. Right. So it's bullshit stuff. Right. So anyway, so let's do it again. Okay. This is not a trick. Okay. So we're not doing anything like, well, in the grand scheme of the universe, you could call that anything else. Okay. I'll hold it this way. Right. I have an alcohol swab packet, lens wipe, right, in the palm of my hand. Okay. No tricks. This is my palm. We're not playing like, guru stuff, right? And this is a packet, right? You can see it. It says alcohol swab, right? Lens wipe, right? Okay. In the palm of my hand. Who believes me? I don't care if you answer yes, no, or not, right? If you're thinking it in your head that yes, you believe me, you are wrong. You don't believe me. I'm going to ask again. I have a lens wipe pack, alcohol swab pack in the palm of my hand. Who believes me? If your head is still thinking, yes, you believe me, or no, you don't believe me, or whatever, right? Okay. You're wrong. Can you see it? Do you know it's there? Belief doesn't exist. Belief is something you hold in the absence of evidence that helps you navigate an area that you have to navigate, but you don't have any hard, solid evidence about that. So you need beliefs to get you through certain areas, right? This is knowledge. Don't confuse the two. That's what it's like to train with me on a regular basis. And then some. Right? If something that simple, well, I call it beliefs. I don't give a shit what you call it. Okay? But if you hold something to be true in the absence of facts or evidence, I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you call it Fred's dog. Right? It's not the same as knowing something to be actually true. Empirical evidence, scientific mind. It's part of the enlightened paradigm on the mandala. You don't have to believe in that either. You don't have to believe in gravity. But if I sweep your legs, what gravity does, still don't believe in gravity. I don't give a shit. How you feeling? Okay? Don't confuse beliefs with knowledge. Okay? With truth. Okay? Truth is what is, whether you buy it or not. Okay? Just like we can't confuse information with knowledge with wisdom. They're three completely different things. Wisdom is dependent on the previous two. Knowledge is dependent on information. Information is just information. Somebody told me that Sensei Miller, whatever. Great. You have information that somebody passed on, but is it true? Is it factual? Is it right? Anyway? A teacher once told me that Mushadori meant, okay, did you bother looking up the kanji? Or are you just running your training based on what other people tell you? Anyway, all right. I don't want to slip into another topic because I promise none unless there were questions. So we should probably wrap this up if there's nothing else. Is there anything else?
Oh, Sensei Golem said, but gravity believes in them.
That's awesome. You can always count on John in class. John's my oldest student, longest training student after getting out of the military. And of the students before that, I have no idea where they are, so I can't even count them. They started before him, but John's been around since the proverbial God made dirt kind of thing. But John's always been like the comic relief for the dojo. He once had a T-shirt that he wore in class that people would get really close to look, and in parentheses it just said introvert. Right. So anyway, cool stuff. And thanks for the new T-shirt, John. We're gonna figure out how to. We're starting a new an online store that's going to have. We've got everything from coffee mugs to our training T-shirts to a bunch of new styles and all that stuff that people will be able to go on and just order. And we'll have a kind of a standard offering, and then what we're looking at also doing is like a T-shirt of the month kind of thing. That'll be a very short run out of a series kind of thing. So that you either get it or you don't, and it'll be kind of a collector's thing. So John's been around so long that he and I had the same idea of like taking old training T-shirts that we still have. I have my first one all the way back from the Shadows of Iga era. It doesn't fit anymore, not because I got bigger, but because of the material that was made out of. Over time, it just kept getting smaller and smaller. And at this point, I don't want to put it on. Not that we couldn't stretch it back out into shape or whatever, but these things start to like get threadbare and whatnot. So really cool stuff. We were just a couple of classes ago reminiscing about different designs on shirts and the symbolic meaning in some of these things. Like since I had done artwork, it was an eggplant that was designed like a person meditating, but it was also the nin symbol, right? It's a really cool thing, right? And so here's this cool thing, right? Seeing somebody meditate and whatever, and hidden. What people didn't understand also was the theme for the training that year, or at least that year's training for where we were, right, was on part of the Kuji and the healing part and the eggplant, right? In Japan, has a lot of medicinal purposes, right? And is a symbol of healing and stuff like that. So it was this really cool thing that it was like this image hidden within an image. And then there was this backside kind of symbol to it as well. Really cool stuff. So anyway, all right. Anything else other than John's humor? Poking.
No, sir.
Okay, cool beans. All right. Well, in that case, we're going to wrap this up. I was hoping to have a friend on next week. Let's see. When are we doing him? It has to be held off until after the 13th of November. 14th, I think, November 14th. I'm going to have my friend Will Mayer on as long as everything works out. And I'm also looking at another date for another friend of mine. For those of you who know Matt Woodard, he's another former police officer and done bodyguard work and all that kind of stuff. So can't wait to have these guys on because we're going to be talking about training, what students need to focus on. We're going to be talking about things that we think are missing or things that change that kind of have things a little bit skewed. A lot of laughter, and we're also going to be reminiscing about the good old days and whatnot, and those kind of things. So hopefully you guys will be able to make it for that, because that will be more than just listening to me and my perspective, right? But it'll be a kind of a throwback to the first iteration of KUDEN, where my student Eric White, who was I call him Radio God, right? Radio personality. We did this thing like a morning talk show. So it'll be kind of like that, but I'm going to have some other guest host on. Sometimes I'm starting to line things up now. So some folks that I'll have on over time will be like some of my students, older students that are now black belts and teachers in their own right and stuff too. So just expanded perspectives and things like that. So of course you'll still be able to ask questions and whatnot, but yeah, so I'm going to add that as a, I don't know, it'll be every week, probably not, but as I can get folks to commit to things and whatnot, I think it'll be another cool dynamic element to the podcast. So that'd be cool. All right. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. I will talk to everyone again next week on KUDEN.
Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.